Welcome to the Nerd Journey Podcast. Our goal is to help you, the technology professional, accelerate your career progression, increase your job satisfaction, and be more effective in your existing role.
We want to bring listeners like you the career advice we wish we'd been given earlier in our careers.
I'm John White, at VJourneyman on Twitter, sharing co-host duties with Nick Cordy at NetworkNerd_.
We're two former IT operations guys who have moved on to pre-sales roles with technology vendors. We have our opinions, but we also like to highlight the journeys of others and see what we can learn from them.
We'd also like to ask for your feedback to make this a conversation, not a one-way broadcast. Email us at nerdjourneypodcast@gmail.com or DM us at nerdjourney on Twitter. So come join us on our nerd journey.
Let's take a trip. Episode 308. What does it mean to coach someone? And how is that the same or different or kind of the same as what a manager or mentor might do? Ramzi Marjaba is a returning guest, and he's the man behind We the Sales Engineers. Ramzi is a podcaster. He's someone who's worked as a sales engineer and has built a tremendous community around him over time. And interestingly enough, Ramzi has also coached a number of sales engineers and even salespeople one-on-one. Today, we're going to get to learn from that experience. If you missed part one of our discussion with Ramzi in episode 307, we defined what a sales engineer is and does. And we talked about job market trends for that role over the last several years. We discussed professional networking as being part of a sales cycle and shared a lot of practical tips for how you can build your professional network on LinkedIn and in other places. Ramzi also shared in that discussion some of the things he's learned after over 300 podcast episodes of We the Sales Engineers. This week in part two of our discussion with Ramzi, we're going to focus the majority of our time on coaching. What are the skills needed to be an effective coach? What exactly is it that coaches do, and how does that compare with people managers and mentors? And as we start out this discussion, ask yourself this question. Do you have a brag file? Should you have a brag file? What exactly does that mean anyway? Let's get straight to the action as we continue part two of our discussion with Ramzi Marjaba.
Engineers don't generally work on soft skills. And that's something everyone, like you were saying earlier, John, if we want to improve our career, we're going to have to learn to do the soft skills. If you're a software developer, you are practicing developing software every day. Sales engineers, we're not practicing the demo on product A every day. We have, especially if you're a generalist SE and you have 100 different products, you're not going to practice them every day. You're going to practice them when you need to, right before you jump on a call with a customer. So I think that's the big difference is that...
Or we'll dry run. We won't even practice, right?
Yeah, we'll dry run. And the salesperson will be answering emails instead of listening. Okay, I'll tell the story. You didn't ask me. Well, I'll tell. Some of the pain that we go through as sales engineers, that sales don't know what SEs are doing and SEs don't know what sales are doing. A salesperson scheduled a call for me or a demo for me on a Thursday. It's a Tuesday. What are we demoing? Oh, they just want to see MPLS, some protocol in networking. They want you to interop with their product. Like, well, hold on, that's a proof of concept. That's not a demo. It's like, yeah, but it'll be fine. It's just quick and easy. Now, I knew the customer. I had a good relationship with him. I called them up and said, hey, can we push the demo till Friday? And I can come on Thursday and sit with you and see what you want to do. It's like, sure, dude, let's do that. So I told my salesperson, we're just going to do it on Friday. I'm going to meet with a customer on Thursday just to see what we're going to do. I went in, none of their products work. So if we're doing an interop and their product doesn't work in the middle of a demo, whose fault is it? The sales team, more specifically the SE. So after a couple hours of trying to figure it out, we decided, you know what? We'll just not interop. We'll just use our product. We'll show you how it works. Cool. I went home, prepared for it for like 3 hours. It was a quick preparation. Went the next day, went out without a hitch. We're walking out. My salesperson comes to me and says, Ramzi, your demo was just a few clicks. Why did it have to take 2 days for you to prepare? That was not a question you asked, but I wanted to share that story for some reason.
There's this concept. David Zweig wrote a book called Invisibles about people who they don't want to be the front person, like the band leader. They're in the background. Maybe they're the roadie who's the best stand up and take down person for the stage and the equipment for people at a concert. They're basically invisible. If they're doing their job, you don't necessarily even know they exist.
Yeah.
And that's probably how IT people feel every time they move mountains to fix a problem that somebody says, oh, well, that was just a couple clicks.
So that's the big thing. If you're good at your job, you make things look easy. And one of the things engineers or technical folks in general struggle with is letting people know about the work that they've done. I had a couple of teammates who used to take on the hardest tickets. So they'd have 1 ticket or 2 tickets every week. They were not critical because there wasn't a reboot or anything. It was a major problem. And they'd take a week to fix it. They were some of the toughest tickets that we had, but they made it look easy. And we had another guy who took the most critical tickets, but with a known problem. We already know what the problem is. All he's going to do is put in a comment that this is the problem. Wait for release X for the update. Ticket closed. He closed 200 tickets in a week. And then he would send out an email. It's like, hey, I closed 200 tickets in a week. Guess who got all the praise? I was talking to someone, an SE director the other day. He talks about keeping a brag file.
Yep.
So as engineers, as technicians, we have a hard time saying how great we are. We're just doing our job. Have a brag file. I did this. This is what I accomplished. This is the impact I've had on my company. So that when time comes for your manager to say, you're not working hard enough, or you left 15 minutes earlier that day, you can say, well, but I also did all this stuff. And when it comes to time for promotion or raises, that's your proposal. That's your business case.
Yeah. You weren't there when we jumped on that 24-hour Sub 1 bridge, but we did it, right?
I really like a couple of the things that you've said.
Just a couple?
Yeah.
Tough crowd.
Yeah, just a couple.
But I wanted to kind of pick out a couple of them. A, we need to practice more. B, we need to kind of quantify the level of effort and things that we're doing and ensure that people know that when we make something look simple, it took a lot of work to make this thing look simple. So quantifying level of effort in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
And then the last thing that you said, which is, not just for one person, but also, for your career advancement file. Here's the things that I did. And then maybe the thing that was unspoken was and here's how it impacted the whole team. Not just the things that I did, but how I, helped the entire team do those things as well.
And one thing to add, if you have a hard time doing that and you have a feeling that your manager doesn't value your work, CC them on the emails, on the things that you're working. You're not CCing them because you want to escalating something. Just like, hey, in case you're wondering about this, just so you know, this is what's going on. So you're not blindsided. This is what's happening. So that they see the amount of work you're doing. Whether they read the email or not, if they see you're communicating with people and they say anything, you can say, refer back to the emails that I just sent. And we've been going back and forth about this for like a week. So it's not like I haven't been doing anything. That's another easier way. If you don't like to say great things about yourself, you could do both. You can make sure your manager's in the loop while at the same time figuring out how to say how great you are without coming off as a arrogant person.
It's calibrating your self-promotion, right? It's like, how informative do I have to be to let you know what it is that I'm doing so you know what it is that I'm doing and you can correctly judge me for the things that I'm working on versus, hey, I'm just an arrogant self-promoter who needs you to know how great I'm doing all the time. Like, there's a calibration there. And I think that open communication with the upstream manager is a good part of that. It's like, hey, this is what I'm trying to do, and I need your feedback on that too, right?
And also, you're doing the manager a favor. The manager is managing, for SEs, 6 SEs, up to 12 SEs. For support teams, we had 20 people, 30 people on the team. They're not going to know what everyone's doing. They're going to have feelings about what everyone's doing, unless you show them exactly what you're doing. If you make it easier for them to understand what it is that you're going through, they don't have to feel about things. They don't have to worry. They don't have to wonder. I don't know if you ever had this, either one of you. Let's say you're having a bit of a problem with someone and you haven't talked to that person about it, you start having arguments in your own head. Like, oh, I'm going to say this and that person's going to say that. And then I'm going to say this and then he's going to say that. And then we're going to start a fight. But in reality, if you just talk to them for 2 seconds, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, cool. And that whole conversation you just had in your head was useless. So if you help your manager not have that, that would be useful too.
That's great guidance.
Well, let's talk about this from the other side, because we've talked about quantifying the things for a manager, letting the manager know. A manager does things like coaching, something that you've done a lot of. I'm just really curious to get your perspective, Ramzi, from the managers that you've talked to. How much is performance management and how much is coaching?
I can tell you from my experience, I haven't had a manager who coached me.
Oh, okay.
I know we've talked in the past, and you guys have both had managers that coach. I've maybe had one manager who coached me in his own way, but it wasn't a formal coaching session or anything like that. He would just chat, and he was more of a mentor than a coach. So I think managers should coach. The problem is there's a power structure. Not necessarily true that the manager would do something like that, but there's a perception that a manager could, if in the end, like John and I are disagreeing about something. As a manager, they can tell me just to do the job as they said they should do. So there's that power struggle where how do you differentiate between John is saying this because he cares about me versus John is saying this because he's my manager at this company and he has to toe the company line. So there is that struggle, and lots of great managers can't figure it out. From what I've seen, majority of managers don't coach. Most one-on-one sessions are not for the SE or the individual. They're for the manager to figure out what they're doing with the job. Like, it's a business review if you're an SE, or if you're missing one thing or their KPIs that they want you to achieve. It's not about what the SE wants to achieve. A coaching session, the individual should set the agenda, not the manager or the coach. Like, what is it that you want to achieve? What is it that you want to talk about today? And also, some individuals have a hard time being vulnerable to their manager because then the manager could use it against them in their performance review. I'm not saying that will happen. I'm saying individuals will think like that.
Sure, yeah.
And it has happened in other places. It's not because they're thinking like that, not because it's never happened, because in their previous life or previous job, they may have tried to be vulnerable and the manager then used it against them. So I think an SE manager should try to coach his or her employees, but they might just have a problem coaching them efficiently or effectively to the full extent. They might be able to coach, but there's always going to be something where the individual will say, maybe I'll keep that to myself. At least that's how I feel about it. And I'd love your opinions as well.
I think a very useful thing to do would be to define coaching. So I'll give you the definition of coaching that I was given in first-time manager training, which is when somebody asks you for help to accomplish something, that you talk them through the process of learning how to do the thing instead of giving them the answer. And that is coaching. But I feel like you were talking about coaching in a slightly different context and definition.
Could you elaborate by what you mean by talking them through the process?
You know, I'll talk about an expense report. Hey, I have, this expense and I don't know, if it goes, this way or this way. How do I submit that? And I wouldn't actually do this with expense reports, but I'll just use it. What have you read so far? Like, what sources did you go to try to figure out this answer? And then they tell you some of those. And then, so what was unclear about that, whether it was category A or category B? It's like, okay, what are the options that you see other than me? Who are you thinking about talking to? So again, expense reports are probably a bad example on this.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, that's the context I've heard the word coaching in.
The way I see coaching is it's a form of guiding people to come up with their own methodology or their own conclusion or their own way of doing things or their own next steps based on the goals that they provided to you. So I think it's similar to what you were saying in the sense.
Are you talking about the overlap with like mentoring?
No.
Oh.
Mentoring is more of like, the way I see it is mentoring is someone who's been there, done that. I can share exactly how you can go through something. Whereas coaching, it's allowing the person to envision the next steps that they need to take to get to where they want to get to. So let's say, hey, John, I want to become a salesperson in the next 2 years. All right, so how can we work through that? One, why do you want to become a salesperson? Let's clarify your why. And then let's come up with the steps. What are the steps that you need to take? And these are not things I'm telling that person. They need to come up with the steps. If I think that they're wrong, I can guide them or nudge them or ask them clarifying questions so that they can see what the right path is versus me telling them. Whereas mentors, they would just, oh, you want to be a salesperson? Just apply. I'm not saying that's what mentors do. A lot of mentors are assigned by the manager, like, hey, Nick, you mentor that guy, but Nick is busy doing a million other things. At least that's been my experience.
Are you saying that a coach maybe doesn't have to have the same experience as a mentor, or maybe they have the same experience, but they take a different approach?
I don't think the coach has to have 100% the same experience as the person is trying to get. I'm not going to have 100% experience as all of my SEs, but I can help them understand what they need to do. A mentor, I feel like mentor is someone who's right in front of me, who can grab me and pull me up. And most of them just reach back and try to grab me. And if they can't, they just walk away because there is no obligation, right? I did my best. That person wasn't reaching out hard enough or for long enough. So I think that's the major difference between the two.
And the coach is like pushing you from behind?
Well, the coach is standing next to you, trying to ask you questions so you can pick the right path. And usually it's more of a formal relationship. If it's not a manager, if in external coaching, there's usually money involved. So they can't just say, you reached, but I couldn't get to you. That's a bad review waiting to happen. My success as a coach is related to your success as an individual. I don't see mentors thinking that way. I told them exactly what to do and they didn't do it. Well, one, they didn't have buy-in. Did they say that that's the work that you want to do? Okay, you want to get into sales. Why? Maybe sales isn't the right thing for you. I have many SEs many aspiring SEs come to me and say, I want to be an SE. I'm like, why? I like dealing with people. Do you know how to deal with salespeople? No, I don't like dealing with salespeople. You're not an SE.
Don't be an SE.
For me, coach is more a formal relationship between two individuals. A mentor is more of a best effort relationship, if you will. A mentor can tell the person exactly what to do to get to where they are. A coach's job is to help the individual build the plan, their own plan for success, and not dictate what they think. So here's something that happens all the time. If someone comes to me and they say, I want to become an SE, or I just lost my job as an SE and I want to get another job. All right, well, one of the most common ways to get a job is through referrals. What can you do to get referrals? Oh, I need to connect with people on LinkedIn. Great. In my head, I know they have to connect to 100 people a week. Right? So how many people can you connect to per week? I can connect to 5. Why 5? Well, because more than that, I think I'll be too annoying. And now I have to break the idea of like, why are you going to be too annoying? Why does it matter? So that they can get to the 100. But if I tell them, hey, you want to become an SE, reach out to 100 people on LinkedIn every day or every week. What's their success ratio? 0. They'll reach a 3. So I think the coach helps the individual build the plan. Mentor just tells them what to do, briefly.
And as the coach, are you also kind of holding them accountable? Like, all right, you said your plan was X, you didn't do X.
Well, it's not just that. It's like, all right, your plan was to do X, you didn't do X. Why? Well, because, all right, so how can we fix that? But there's a symptom to them not doing X. It could be that they just don't have enough time to do X, and maybe it was unrealistic of them and we need to adjust X. Or we need to do something in the back end to make X, to make their work more efficient so they can achieve X. Maybe copy and paste your invitation every time. Change the name. It's not nice, it's not ideal, but if your goal is to reach X, then you should either do that or reduce X to Y and customize every message.
I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Like, you've actually turned this into like a business from We the Sales Engineers? Or is it something that you do, for the love of the game?
Both.
Mm-hmm.
So I said earlier, like, if you reach out to people and you were able to help, it's not a bad thing to receive compensation for that help.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm taking time away from my family. I'm taking time away from my hobbies, my health to help people. There's nothing wrong if I'm giving them value in return. There's nothing wrong for me getting monetary value. And everybody that works with me, I don't think any of my clients are upset that they're paying me money. And I've had people for a few years working with me on a monthly basis. So I can do that for the love of helping people. And the thing I think about it is, if I'm successful enough in coaching to the point where I'm making enough money to live off of it, I can coach more people. So why shouldn't I do that?
I totally agree. I think that it's a completely valid thing if you can prove your value to charge for that, because you're providing a service and hopefully adding value to that person's life.
I believe I am. Something to think about is, would you ask Cisco if they provide routers for the love of routers or for a business? We wouldn't. Like, it's a business. But for some reason, when it's an individual, like who's posted on LinkedIn or whatever, it becomes like, oh, you're trying to take money. Are you taking advantage of us? If I am taking advantage of you and you pay me for, let's say, one session, you find out pretty quickly, you're going to tell everybody around you that I'm taking advantage of you. And then I have 0 customers.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what are some of those skills that the coach needs to be a successful coach?
Well, one, they have to have a lot of experience in life in general.
Mm-hmm.
Listening is a very important one, because people tell you something and what they mean is something else. So you kind of have to dig in, probe, being able to ask the right questions and the vision building questions and the probing questions to get to the bottom of a problem that they have. And also being able to convince people of something, usually through asking questions. It's the same as it's sales engineering.
So discovery.
Yeah. You're doing a discovery and you're helping the customer or you're helping the individual build the solution in his or her own brain so they can commit to doing whatever it is that they need to do to achieve their goals. And keep in mind, I coach mainly SEs and I have some sales people that I coach. So I'm not telling them like, hey, you're going to make $1 million. This is how you make $1 million. That's not what I'm coaching them on. I'm coaching like, hey, I've lost 3 deals in a row because I'm missing something. So, all right, let's dig in and find out what you're missing. You're not going to ask Phil Jackson. Well, you're not going to ask Phil Jackson anything right now. But when he was coaching, you're not going to ask him to teach you how to buy Bitcoin. As an SE coach, I'm going to teach you how to be a better SE, a better salesperson. That's it.
Or how to do one of those skills that makes up a successful SE or salesperson better, right?
Well, the funny part about it, a lot of it has nothing to do with working with customers. It's internal relationships.
Oh, interesting. I would love to hear about that pattern that you've seen.
So a few things that I've noticed. A lot of people come to me saying like, hey, I want to get better at doing demos. And then we never talk about demos through the coaching. Always end up talking about discovery. Your demo sucks because your discovery sucks in general. Your audience is from IT. I'm sure whoever sat through a demo, most of them have been bored out of their mind. Why? Because no one's talking about anything they care about. Why? Because we've never done a discovery before. We just showed up and started doing stuff. So that's one thing, that's one trend that I've noticed. The second trend that I noticed is if you look through the SE life cycle, you're recruited, you're onboarded, and then there's continuous learning. At some point, an SE hits a stagnation point. I'm bored. I'm doing the same things over and over again. What should I do? If they hit that, that means they didn't hit the problems they have with account management. A lot of SEs have problems with account managers where they're just thrown under the bus, especially in a tough market. Oh, the SE didn't do a demo that closed the deal. SE's demo sucked. But also a lot of times we end up working on how can we make our job more fun? I don't want to go into sales. I don't want to become an SE manager. I want to remain an SE, but I'm bored. What can we do? So we just start building advanced topics, how to become a better SE, how to make your life more fun so that you don't quit your job.
Not so different than what you mentioned before about doing things differently with the podcast so that you're not bored. Continuing the learning path.
Yeah.
I like that. I still think that a manager can be a good coach. I'm going to disagree with you on that a little bit.
I don't disagree.
I think the right manager can be a great coach because the goals can be aligned to make the manager successful, assuming your manager shares their metrics and tells you how you can make them successful. So here's what I want to know, Ramzi. You coach people, you've been an SE, you've been a salesperson. Have you ever thought about being a people leader in some form or fashion and how that might be the same or different from being the coach.
So one, I agree. SE leaders can be great coaches. Doesn't mean that they are or they all are.
100%.
For me, yes, I've thought about going into SE management. So here's the thing. I'm in a very small market in Ottawa, Canada. To become an SE manager, and I think John is an exception to that rule, is you generally have to be promoted within your organization. It's much harder to get an SE management job outside of your organization. Would anyone disagree with that statement?
I think there's some truth in that, but there's also the crossover stuff that you talked about earlier, which is like if there's a competitor in the market, the skills of being an SE for one of those companies like cross over 80% over into a different company.
So yeah, it is easier to become an SE within your organization than outside of your organization.
Yeah, probably true.
Unless like the stars align. And there hasn't been any opportunities for me to become an SE manager within my organization. My goal when I moved to this company, when I talked to the manager at the time, was to be an SE manager. And he said yes, 100%. And then nothing happened. My company, there's a lot of people who've been here for a long time. So you have to wait for someone to retire. It's not growing. We're not in a hyper growth mode. So there aren't new teams popping up. So there haven't been too many opportunities. But also on the flip side of that, and I think John can talk about that more than I can. As an external coach, I can be 100% honest with people. I'm not beholden to anybody else. They're my stakeholder. They're the ones I care about. John kind of he has two stakeholders. His SEs are his clients that he wants to make sure that they're happy, right? But he also has his management team. And so he's beholden to two people or two groups where I'm not. And that makes my life easier than him. So if he gets, and John, please tell me to shut up if I'm wrong. If you get something from management that you know that your team is not going to be happy with, you might be able to get buy-in from it, but you're still going to have to go through with whatever decree, let's call it. Is that accurate?
I would say to a certain degree that is true. Like, part of a manager's job is to filter out some of those things and choose the battles that are important to fight. If it's like, hey, this is going to be 1% increase in effort across a team of 5 or 6, as opposed to, with a 1% benefit, then, that may be a wash. And if you see somebody is asking for a 10% uplift in effort with, 0% return, then part of the job is to push back on that a little bit. But I think more importantly, when you are paying a coach, one of the things that you are paying for is their direct honesty in the fact that you are the stakeholder, right? You can be more honest with a paid coach than, maybe with a manager without like a strong relationship, right, with that manager, because, if you're open and vulnerable, then there's the perception that vulnerability can be used against you, as you said.
So here's a quick example. I'm fairly blunt, and that's actually one of the feedback I got from my manager. Maybe a little bit too blunt. But I'm fairly blunt with my manager, and I'm honest with him 95%, not 100%. I'm only honest with him 95%. Most people aren't even that honest with their managers. That 5% is reserved for, I might want to look for a job somewhere else, for example. Or I might want to quit working for him and do WeDSEs full time. I tell him 100% that, hey, I'm interested in that job within our company. Can you help me get it? And he's like, yes, 100%. But most managers don't do that. Another manager in the same company blocked me from getting another job, blocked me from getting an interview for another job because he didn't want to lose me and I was an important member of his team. So I was 20% honest with that one. So it always depends on the manager. But the fact of the matter is, the manager, there's a business involved for him. He's not just serving the engineers. He needs to serve the business. And he's going to have to balance the benefit to the business versus the benefit to his people or her people. I'm not balancing anything.
Right.
My main priority is the people. So if they tell me, oh, my manager said I have to come up with six meetings in a week with some random people, then I might say, oh, that's a load of baloney. But you might still have to do it. Just call people up and schedule meetings with them, whether they're useful or not. I'm not going to say that, but I could. As a manager, no, they have to be useful. It's useful because you're doing this. I mean, some managers are honest and say, hey, I know this is not very useful, You might not, especially if you're an enterprise SE with 3 customers. How are you going to schedule 6 meetings? I don't know. The manager would say, like, I know this is kind of weird. This is something we have to do, and it's going to die down at some point. That's an honest manager. Other managers I've seen, no, this is a great idea. We're going to have to do that. But where am I going to get 6 customers to meet with in a week, every week? It's the same 3 people.
That's 2 calls per person per week.
Yeah. 1 minute call each.
That's right.
How you doing? Doing good?
See you tomorrow. So I'm wondering if we can turn the coach thing around slightly and ask you, why keep doing We the SEs, and what is your vision for the future, if you don't mind sharing?
I don't mind sharing at all. So I've been in sales for a long time. When I sell something to a customer, it doesn't really affect them. Sure, I help them solve a problem, but in the end, it didn't change their lives, didn't do anything, didn't get a raise. When I help an SE, when I let them understand like how to do the right demo, how to do the right discovery, how to deal with their annoying salesperson that's been bugging them, and how to become better, like how to build a better relationship with them, their life significantly improves. I have a bigger impact on a person's life by being their coach than by being a salesperson, which is why I still do VDSEs and why I coach. The reason why I haven't quit my job is because I don't want to be in a position, or I don't want to put myself in a position where I have to sell a coaching service so I can feed my kids. I don't want to tempt myself. I don't want to test myself. I don't want to put myself in that position. So I'd rather lose clients right now because I have a job than put myself in a position where I have to be dishonest or something to close a deal with and coach someone, or have to suffer a client that's not very nice. The future of VDSEs, I mean, there's a lot of paths we're looking at. I'm doing some consulting in terms of sales and sales engineering. That's also fun because generally speaking, you have a sales process, and especially at startups, you have a sales process. The SE process has nothing to do with the sales process, and somehow you need to figure it out. So I'm helping them combine the two, so it's more seamless and they work together as a team versus 2 polar opposite things. And I'm going to continue coaching. That's something like the future of VDSEs is coaching. I might try to get more coaches to come and assist me and help me, so I'd be able to take on more clients. That's what I'm willing to share for now.
For other people listening who might have some kind of side hustle, whether they do it for money or they're crazy podcasters like John and me who do it for the millions of fans, what advice do you have for folks like that to try and keep the 2 worlds from having this conflict of interest, or making sure you have time for both?
What I like to tell people, what I usually recommend as a mentor, because I'm not a podcast coach, is if you're going to do something, you don't want it to be a conflict of interest, but if you can do something that's related to what you do at your job, it makes it easier to justify. If it makes you better at what you do at your job, that's usually a good thing. Maybe you're not going to make money from the podcast, but you would get raises from your job or get a new opportunity to work somewhere else. And it's also branding. You want people to know who you are so that you don't have to reach out to people to connect with you, to connect with them. You want them to reach out to connect with you. Beyond that, like if we're talking about something like a side hustle that's unrelated, do something you enjoy doing and you enjoy talking about, you enjoy learning more about. Just keep in mind that if you try to turn it into a business, your hobby might disappear. If you're heard of someone who enjoyed skiing, and then because they enjoy skiing, they started a clothing brand for skiers, and then they stopped skiing because all they were doing was working on their clothing brand, and then they started hating their clothing brand because it stopped them from skiing. So I like having multiple streams of income, but also I don't want to sacrifice that for my health and for my mental sanity. So just be wary of that. I went through a period where I almost burned out and almost quit VDSEs altogether, which is part of the reason I stopped doing the podcast.
I really like that idea of balance and the wariness, because you're right. You do need to balance physical health and mental health with all those things, not sacrifice.
I mean, listen, if you like skiing, maybe you're better off creating content of you skiing. It'll be something more fun to share. And you'll have to learn a new skill like editing or stuff like that. But at least you have more of a reason to go skiing now versus I'm going to start a clothing brand related to skiing, which is going to take me away from skiing, which is what I love to do to begin with. So, which I don't, by the way. I'm not talking about me. I hate skiing. I hate the cold. I'm not going to go on that rant. So yeah, just pick something that you would want to do, you would enjoy doing.
And what are some of those danger zone signals that you might be close to burnout? If we want to warn people listening of, hey, red zone, here's what to watch out for.
For me personally, it was whenever I saw in my calendar that I had a podcast recording, I wouldn't get butterflies as if like, oh, I'm so excited, I want to talk to that person. It was more butterflies like, I don't want to talk to that person. Not that I don't want to talk to that person, I just don't want to talk to people. So it's like my body was reacting to it in a negative way. So listen to your body. If you feel like, I don't want to, like, I'm all about like pushing through and hustling and doing the things that you have to do, but also, which is why I kept going for an extra 100 episodes. Maybe that was a bit too long. Listen to your body before I did. That's all I can say about that. I'm not an expert in burnout or anything like that. Just that's been my experience.
Ramzi, I really appreciate, the update on We the SEs, letting us know about the coaching side of what you're doing. I think that some of our listeners, might be interested in that. There's probably a feeling out process, but, we can point them to your LinkedIn and hopefully that's a good way to contact you on that.
Yeah, I'm happy to help in any way I
And
can.
then feedback on processes, like, the idea of practice, like, hey, maybe we should be doing that more. If every single other professional in their field practices, maybe we as technical salespeople should be doing that too. It's very profound.
Well, thank you.
Hey, until next time, and we don't want to wait 200 and almost 300 episodes to have you on again.
Hey, you guys call, I'll answer. Sometimes I might be late, sometimes I might forget. I'll blame my kids every single time, but I will be here.
Amazing. Ramzi, thanks so much for being on.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
This idea of doing discovery, this can be used in many different aspects of your personal and professional life. You can do this in one-on-ones with your boss to better understand what your boss cares about, what they're asking for, and maybe a little bit more context about the situation. That's really what discovery is, giving you more context about a request someone is making, the things they want, the things they need, the things they care about. If I'm working the help desk for my company and someone sends in a ticket and says they need a license of Microsoft Office to do something, it may not be that that's what they need. You might need to do some discovery to figure out what they're trying to do first, and the solution might actually be something very different. But if you don't do the discovery, you might not get to the right solution. I think this can also help in our personal lives too when we have conversation with people. Get that clarity, make sure you understand what other people mean, and maybe this focus on discovery, if it's just top of mind even, maybe it'll help prevent some misunderstandings in your personal and professional life. I really enjoyed hearing about the coach as being untethered from any specific company, and that enables the coach to only have one stakeholder, the person they're helping, the person who hired them. It would be difficult for the manager in the scenario where the manager knows the employee wants a job that doesn't exist at the company. But I feel like the good managers, the great managers we've spoken to on the show, know how to walk that fence really, really well to serve both the individual and the company they work for. And I always think back to episodes 137 and 138 with Don Jones, where he talks about this willingness as the people manager to help someone go to that next step in their career, even if it means moving on from the company they're at or the team they're on under that manager. And maybe that is a question that the would-be people leader should be asking in interviews. How is that looked upon if a member of the team, a member of my team wants to leave because they have a good career opportunity for them? How will you see that as my leadership? We did talk a lot about coaching in that discussion, and we talked a little bit about the comparison to mentoring. But if you want a masterclass in what it means to be a mentor, how to mentor people, and what it means to be a mentee, go back and listen to the episodes with Dale McKay, my mentor, and episodes 288 and 289, well worth your time. So what was your favorite thing that we covered in this discussion with Ramzi? I'd love for you to write us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast and put in your favorite thing from this discussion. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did, and we'll see you next time.
Farewell, listeners. Tune in next time as the journey continues. I'm John White at VJourneyman, for Nick Cordy at NetworkNerd_, signing off.
Adios.
Awesome. Hey, Ramzi, I think we're running up against time, so I'm gonna close it out, if that's okay.
No, well, I want to keep talking to you guys, so deal with it.
I wasn't asking permission. I was just informing you.
Man, you are a manager now. You used to be much nicer when you weren't a manager.
I've never said that to somebody on
He's sassy.
Oh
today.
yeah, you just said it to me. Why didn't you tell me? You never said that.
He's just practicing those tough conversations you were referencing earlier. Sometimes you have to tell the customer no.
I'm not a customer.
Oh.
I'm sure Nick would be an amazing mentor if he's not already. Please invite me on the podcast again.
Too funny.
I love that.
Too funny.
And he's still out there selling it.
Yeah. Well, I'll never stop.